Welcome to the Virtual College Fair for CTCL Virtual Days. My name is Annabelle and I'll be the facilitator. We thank you for joining us today. We have St. John's College representatives who will be able to provide you some great information and also answer any questions you may have. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is also just one of the many different sessions happening, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions. This presentation is also being recorded and will be available within a week at the same website where you registered. And now I'd like to turn it over to our presenters from St. John's College.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Annabelle. Give me one moment to set up my presentation. And then we're going to go ahead and backspace to the beginning because it's decided that it wants to start in the middle. So welcome, everyone, to our presentation on St. John's College. My name is Drew Goodwin. I use he, him pronouns. And this morning, we're going to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about St. John's College, this quirky, weird little place that we all love so much. So I want to start with using this descriptor contrarian. So the New York Times has described St. John's College as the most contrarian college in America. And as we'll get through our presentation, we'll see in the ways in which we kind of go against the grain of higher education today and kind of beat our own drum. We are also, as the presentation is geared around, a college that changes lives. So this is just a little bit of the excerpt from the Colleges That Change Lives book. Just a few highlights, looking at learning the Greek, the language, not Greece, the civilization. You know, letting your other friends design your own majors while you frolic with Kerouac or ponder Kant. And it talks about the program, which is this wonderful exploration of the Western canon. So this all gets into what we call a great books curriculum. And so this curriculum will have you reading all of these books that are on this list right now. So that's a little bit over 200 books or about 300 pages of reading every single week for your entire four-year college career. And so we're really working with primary texts. We're not reading, you know, someone else's thoughts on Aristotle. We're reading Aristotle himself. And this curriculum will really go ahead and be what we call an ultimate interdisciplinary curriculum, where we'll have our students study philosophy, biology, that ancient Greek that I mentioned, history, poetry, economics, astronomy. And the idea behind this is this very liberal arts notion that in order to understand one area in particular, it is necessary to understand human knowledge as a whole and how it connects. Because you might need your mathematics to write that English literature paper, or you might need your music theory to understand that chemical concept. Human knowledge is not a bunch of boxes on a shelf that we can pick one up and it's nice and neat in and of itself. It's more like a ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese, where everything's kind of mixed together. They're all touching, sometimes in gross ways, but they all work together to constitute that whole, right? So they're all working together. So moving forward, I also want to talk a little bit about our method. So not only is the things that you'll be studying going to be very different from what your peers might, but at St. John's, no class is larger than 20. And they are entirely discussion-based. So we don't do lectures, we don't do tests, we don't do quizzes. Your job essentially all 4 years is to come to class having read and be prepared to discuss. And that doesn't mean having all the answers. More often than not, that might be coming to class and saying, I understood none of the reading. I don't know what's happening, but these are the areas that I'd like to discuss so that I can figure out what's happening in this text. So very often the things you understand are the things you won't understand at the end of class, and the things that you don't understand are the things you think you might understand at the very end. Now in this situation, we don't really call our faculty professors because their job is not to tell you the answer, but rather to facilitate the conversation to help you find an answer or find multiple answers. So you'll see this word on your screen, tutors. And they're really the more practiced learner in the room, helping guide us through all of these big and daring ideas that we'll study in our 4-year program. So this is what a typical college classroom will look like here at St. John's. As you'll notice, it's very, very small. This is actually a picture of one of our mathematics classes, which is going to be even one of our more smaller courses. And you'll notice this very collaborative setting where we're all working together to understand whatever concept we're working with. Now, we are also distinct in that we do have multiple campuses. So I am currently actually based on our Annapolis campus located in Maryland, but we also have another campus in Santa Fe. So I'll go ahead and start with Annapolis because it is chronologically first and also historically first. So a few key facts about Annapolis: it is the sailing capital of America. As you can see from this photo, there are just sailboats dotted all over in our harbor. We also host the largest croquet match in America. Croquet is one of the most important sports in Annapolis for our students. Annapolis is also located about 30 miles from Washington, D.C., anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes, depending on traffic. And we're most known for blue crabs and Old Bay. Those of us that live in Maryland have Old Bay, the seasoning, in our blood. They'll make hot sauce out of it. They will make various other beverages out of it. And it is quite the thing for all of us to enjoy. So we were originally founded in 1696, which makes us the 3rd oldest college in the country. You can see a little bit of the Annapolis campus as we go through some of these photos, that it is that more old, ivory, historic feeling of a campus that was constructed in the 1700s. So it really has that austere trappings of that East Coast liberal arts college. We are also located on College Creek, which is a tributary of the Chesapeake Bay. So sailing, and in this case, for this photo, crew, is a very, very popular campus activity, although it does require you to wake up at 5:30 a.m., which is not always doable, but our students manage. This is just a photo of our dining hall, and you can see kind of the more historic nature of our campus in that it is lit with chandeliers, large windows, very historic, very English colonial, if you will. Now, I did mention croquet, and I do want to go back to croquet because it is very important. Croquet is kind of our football, right? We don't have NCAA athletics, but we do have croquet. So we are, first of all, national champions in croquet. Some of our more accomplished croquet players will be like the MVP of the entire croquet circuit in the entire country. But the big deal is our annual grudge match against the Naval Academy every single year. So the Naval Academy will beat us at basically every other sport except for croquet, because croquet really comes down to applying both geometry and physics and a little bit of luck all the way together, all three of which our students specialize in. So they are currently beating the Naval Academy 30-7, and it would have been 31-7 had it not been for our current situation. So I'm very confident in that. Now, changing gears a little bit, I do want to travel us all the way across the country back to Santa Fe, which is where our second campus is located. So Santa Fe, a few highlights: it is the 3rd largest art market in the country after both New York and Chicago, and it's very outdoorsy. So we have over 478 miles of hiking and biking trails, 79 ski trails. So the campus life is going to be extremely different. You won't find yourself on the water so often as you might find yourself in the middle of nowhere surrounded by the night sky. We are about 65 miles from Albuquerque, which is the main transit through which our students will get to Santa Fe. And it is also the chili pepper capital of America. So you very quickly have to find yourself in one of 3 tribes for chili. You either prefer your chili red, your chili green, or what they call Christmas, which is a little bit of both. So it's one of those things that if people in Annapolis will have strong feelings about crabs and Old Bay, people in Santa Fe have very strong feelings about their chilies. Now, our Santa Fe campus is also a little bit different in that this style is very different. So it's based more on this Spanish colonial adobe, more outdoor architecture. So you'll find really large placitas and really great ventilated outdoor spaces, because even in Santa Fe, when it gets to 30 or 20 degrees, the sun makes it bearable with a blanket and a sweatshirt. So for those of you who might be more familiar with East Coast winters where it just kind of sucks all year around, Santa Fe in the sun in the winter gets quite pleasant and makes it really, really amazing to have these beautiful outdoor spaces. So this is going to be actually a picture of our library. Now our libraries are very distinct, but I do love this photo of our Santa Fe library because I think it really highlights the volumes of texts that we'll have. And our libraries really focus as a wonderful place not only to study for our students, because they certainly will do a lot of that, but also to find the books you need. So all of the books that we're reading, like I said, are those primary texts. And so each of our libraries will have upwards of 30 to 40 copies of each program text and various translations from various time periods. So it's really a resource for our students to be able to check out their books, which they can do so for 4 months at a time. So you can get away with not having to buy all of your text if you really don't want to. You can check them out of the library when you need them, which is really helpful. And again, you see this wonderful architecture, these balconies and these placitas. Santa Fe notably has over 70 balconies in their dormitories, and many of their dormitories are singles. So that is your own personal balcony, which is just so wonderful just to sit there with a cup of coffee in the morning, take in the fresh, crisp mountain air, and see the city down below. So as you can see, this photo I think really well highlights one of my favorite factors about the Southwest and about Santa Fe in particular, is that you can just see forever. Those mountains in the very background might be over 100 miles away, but you can still see them in the distance. You can see the downtown of Santa Fe, and you can see our campus. So it makes just a gorgeous, wonderful, freeing place that if you want to be that student that wants to go climb a mountain and read your book and do goat yoga, Santa Fe would be a fantastic option. Now I want to finally shift our gears once more and ask the question, well, what do you do with a St. John's degree? Because this is a very both unique yet universal education that provides students the opportunity to study human knowledge writ large and go in any direction that they might feel. And one of the senses that I see in our graduates is this sense of possibility. They didn't major just in biology or major in journalism, right? They explored everything. So when they graduate, their thought process is, okay, do I want to start my own business? But I also think med school would be cool, but maybe law school, but also that PhD program at the University of Chicago in English literature also sounds really cool. And they feel confident that they can do anything they want. So this spotlight right here is of Lydia Palgreen, who is one of our graduates from 1997. So she currently is the editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post, but has also worked in the New York Times. But she contrasts very well some of these other folks we have highlighted here who have gone on to be entrepreneurs. So Warren Winiarski was the founder of Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, which beat French wines in a blind taste test in the 80s. We have a US Senator from Nebraska who's one of our graduate students. We also have other journalists, other politicians and ambassadors, and also creative folks who are producers, directors, screenwriters, all of those types of things. So with St. John's education, contrary to what a lot of folks might ask us originally, is not limiting. It's limitless in a way that other degrees and other programs don't allow you to be. So that being said, I don't want to spend too much time. This is a very different education, a very unique education. So I try not to overwhelm students with too much information. So that being said, is that I will go ahead and conclude my remarks. Again, my name is Drew Goodwin. I use he, him pronouns. And thank you all so much for joining us this morning. And we would love to get to any of the questions that you might have been popping into our Q&A. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can all see our beautiful faces and we can go ahead and chat with all of you this afternoon. So again, you'll want to go ahead and post any questions into that Q&A, and we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can in our time here this morning. So thank you, friends.
And I would love to just jump in while we're waiting for any questions to come in, because I don't see any quite yet. They're all letting it marinate and all of these amazing things Drew just sent at us. So I think I'll just pop in with a couple extra things too. So I'm Allison. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions on the Santa Fe campus. And I'm kind of a unique person in that I grew up in Annapolis, where, as Drew was saying, our original campus is, but I chose to do St. John's in Santa Fe. And I just wanted to touch on real quick the fact that, you know, the fact that students don't major in any one particular thing, I think is one of the things that sets us apart the most, that because they are doing, as Drew said, this entire interdisciplinary, all-inclusive education, you really get a sense of all of these different fields in a way that I think more kind of what's called traditional colleges, you know, you choose one major, you have your one focus, and then you kind of get to pick and choose, you know, various other things. But I think at St. John's, we kind of take some of the stress out of that for you by not having you choose a major and then sophomore year fall in love with something else and freak out and try to get the credits and everything. That I think what's really important about this program is that you get to kind of try it all out, and it's done essentially in chronological order. So you're doing philosophy, theology, history, politics, government, language, music, but also math and science through reading these books. And that might be one of the areas that you really actually want to go into, instead of, I think, the majority of us, when we just major in maybe what we're already good at or what's in our comfort zone after high school. You know, I certainly was going to major in English and drama in my undergrad because that's really what I was best at, as opposed to really thinking that that's really what I wanted to spend the rest of my life on. And so I think that there's something amazing about this, that we give you time to explore not only these different ideas, but the different parts of yourself. So that when that does translate to when you are leaving St. John's, I think you make a much more informed decision about what you want to go into 4 years later. But also one of the best things about this is that because you're not just choosing one area, it's an incredibly flexible education. So you can move between many different careers in life too. You're not just setting yourself up for one area. And so if that's, you know, 5 years out of school or 20 years out of school or whatever, you can suddenly be like, well, no, I do want to, you know, pivot to this entirely different career. And so this education is really, really flexible as well. So I just wanted to hit on those points too. I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes us from other schools.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that in this particular time period or time or moment that we're living in, a lot of people are realizing, wait a second, is what I've devoted my entire life to even like feasible now, right? Will TV shows need as many screenwriters, or will tourism bureaus need as many employees or marketers or whatever? So then it makes it difficult to like shift your brain into like this complete other headspace when all you've known, you know, through your entire academic and professional career is one area. I do want to shift, and I want to address one of our questions in the Q&A, which is a question about classes in this anthropology or archaeology type situation. And I actually want to kind of kick that maybe over to Rachel, if you wouldn't mind, Rachel, and talking a little bit about how maybe kind of the study of humanity or its past kind of might fit into the program.
Sure. So we actually don't have majors or minors at St. John's. And so we don't have classes that are exclusively anthropology or archaeology. But we do touch on anthropology in most of the things we study in seminar, just by dint of studying a very broad swath of thinkers and different types of the timeline and chronology of humanity over the past 3,000 years. So that would sort of answer that question, but we also do have opportunities to specialize, and those are found in our preceptorial classes, which is kind of like the closest thing St. John's has to an electives, offered for juniors and seniors and commingled. And those can range and vary every year. They might be different. There are popular ones that are recurrent. For example, we had a computation preceptorial that was really, really popular. So it came back for a few years. I think they're still offering it, if I'm not mistaken. So that would answer that question. And then we also have another question about being test optional. So I will bounce that over to whoever wants to take that one.
I'll jump in with that, because it's really fun, because we've been doing a lot of, as you guys can imagine, you know, with all of the virtual world we are all existing in and navigating these days. We've done a lot of panel discussions, and I always get a kick out of that question. So thank you for asking it, because it's one of my favorite ones to answer. Because, you know, a lot of other schools will be on these panel discussions and they all say, oh, well, you know, we now are test optional for the first time, or we're really responding to you guys. We know it's hard to maybe take the SAT this year, or whatever, and then it gets to St. John's, or, you know, we're like, well, we've been test optional for 300 years. So basically, It's something, and I think it's actually a very important point. Not only technically, don't worry about, if you can or can't take those, tests this year, but I think especially for St. John's, it's really iconic and important about our education that we really look at you as a whole applicant. It's what, colleges call holistic, is kind of the catchphrase term for how we do our admissions, which is, yes, we look at your grades, yes, we look at the classes you've taken, but it's almost more important that you've challenged yourself, that you've tried to do things outside your comfort zone than a perfect GPA cutoff or then perfect test scores. And so if you're an amazing test taker, you have great test scores already, by all means, submit those to us. That can help with things like scholarship and other aspects, but it's not the only thing we're looking at. And again, there's not some technical numerical cutoff. We really, really are interested in our students and everything that they're bringing. And so sometimes that can be a straight A rock star student. You've achieved really amazing things in high school, or it can be someone more like myself, for example, that had A's in areas she was really interested in. I'm talking about myself in the third person, interesting. And, or I had C's in some things I wasn't interested in. And I think I wasn't motivated to learn those things, or I knew that it was some arbitrary measurement of engagement versus that I actually, was interested in these ideas. And so I really appreciate for my kind of mind that there are other ways of showing your intelligence and your passion for learning. And I think that's very much important to not only the requirements for admissions for St. John's, but absolutely what we're looking for in applicants. That again, you might be the top student, coming out of your high school, you're really engaged with ideas, or you might be the thinker that was not as engaged in high school because you didn't fit in that more traditional education of exams or lecture classes or whatever, and you've been dying to have these important conversations, and this is your place where you can really get into those ideas and push back on things and not just take an answer as the final one. And so for me, that was the kind of education I think I had been longing for. And so that test, question is really good because I think that just manifests, again, how St. John's is looking at education. We really have an amazing reputation for kind of being the gold standard for pure education and not just one focused, technical skill set or whatever, but really getting into these ideas. And so that's what we're looking for in all of our admissions kind of requirements.
Yeah, totally. Sorry, Rachel, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. Were you going to add on to Allison's?
I was.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, because I always get this wonderfully bright student who is like all APs or all international baccalaureate, and they're like a rock star, but they think they have it all figured out. They think that like their musings on something are like, the best thing since Aristotle, or that they're better than Aristotle. I've had students tell me that they're smarter than Aristotle. And we don't want, we're a little bit funky. We don't want students who think they have it all figured out and that's kind of how it is, because that's going to be a really rude awakening for you when you get to St. John's and realize that your opinion is not the only one that matters, or the only one that is correct. So you can be that straight A student, but also not necessarily be a great fit for what we do. So there's a lot of different ways to demonstrate that to us. But I'll keep it there, and I'll let Rachel move us along.
Hey, yeah, no, so I just wanted to bring up, I love this question. Somebody asked about what percentage of our polity is international. And I love this question because we have one of the highest percentages. And I know in our freshman class, or prior freshman class alone, it's 15%, but overall, almost a quarter of our students are actually international. And they span from, I think it's 13 or 14 different countries, all attending. So yeah, we have a very, very strong population of international students. And because we're all commingling and there aren't majors or minors, you don't have that effect of sort of like, the art majors hanging out together and the science majors. And you also don't have sort of the domestic folks hanging out together because we're all commingled in classes. So you get to really have this beautiful intermingled idea swapping cultural hodgepodge of experience just by dint of attending classes and being a student and being a Johnny at St. John's. So I love this question, and I love that we can answer it with such a strong percentage.
Yeah, And I do want to explain a couple things, or explain a little more about something that Rachel said. So she used the word polity. I always like to explain what that means. So for those of you who might have studied ancient Greek history, you know that they were in polises, right? So polity just refers to our community as a whole. And because the only Greek life that we have is in the classroom, we like to kind of put little pieces of Greek roots into our everyday parlance. So I also want to I want to point out something very interesting about our international population that is very different from a lot of schools. So a lot of schools, their international population tends to be very high economic status. So they are the students whose parents in their home country are lawyers, or they own really large businesses, and they come and they pay that sticker price, right? Our international population is unique in that because St. John's does give need-based scholarships to international students, our international population is a lot more of a representative sample of what's actually out there. So you're not just interacting with, you know, people who are well-to-do in other countries. You're acting with someone, or you're interacting with people who maybe their parents are like servers at a restaurant in their home country, or their parents, you know, are of less means. So you get that more of that that different interaction with folks, that you're not just interacting with, you know, just the well-to-do people. So in my college experience, I had gone to school in Mexico, and the school that I went to, all of the kids had so much money, and so they thought they were immune from all of the you know the things that the less fortunate would like be immune to. And I'm sitting here as this like, you know, like first generation Pell Grant student. I'm just like, I don't understand what's happening and why you people are so weird. So you get a lot of that really great interaction with people from around the world and around really different perspectives, which for our education being entirely discussion based, you want that really wide diversity and experiences are kind of across the board.
Yeah, I want to just touch on that too. I think what's really cool about the international population, and I think just again part of the importance that we put on diversity at St. John's as well is, you know, as my awesome colleagues and friends have said, you know, it's important to have people of all different experiences and religions and, you know, all of these different interests. As Rachel was saying, I think the diversity of the interests is one of the coolest things in every classroom. So you're not segregated out by interests is really powerful. But I think especially with the international students, what they go on and do with this education, because think about how fascinating it is to not only be reading the founding works of democracy, especially in the ancient world, but reading American democracy especially, that does have such a huge global influence. So many students coming, you know, specifically from Africa, for example, especially young women who maybe don't have the voice in their home countries or not a traditional clear career path or whatever it is, they come to St. John's, they learn these incredibly important skills of conversation, of confidence, of, you know, pushing back against the status quo, all of these things that were really challenging and being contrarian about, as Drew was saying at the beginning in that New York Times piece. That's the skill set that you're really getting. And so I think especially for young women, I think for especially anyone coming from a minoritized, you know, population, to be told you do have a seat at the table, you do have a voice, you've been strengthening that for 4 years versus other educations where you kind of more passively receive or whatever. These are really active, immediate, practical skills you're getting here that I do think are becoming more and more obsolete, and a lot of other schools are not teaching explicitly. And so I think again that you know kind of sets you up for even more success. But again, with these young women or students from any country, they go back and they start schools especially, or they, you know, start other careers in their home countries. But I think the education is especially beautiful because they can start to revolutionize how, you know, their countries are looking at education, kind of based on a St. John's model. And so especially these schools being started by young women in their home countries is a really awesome manifestation of the St. John's education. So especially the international students are really, really cool and something we're very, very proud of at St. John's.
Awesome. So it looks like I do want to draw our attention a little bit less towards things that are a little bit less serious, but nonetheless as important. And I want to pull our focus a little bit to, because we have a question about campus life and the difference between both campuses. So I actually want to pull that a little bit towards Rachel, and then I'm going to actually have Allison jump in to kind of give us a contrasting view out in Santa Fe, if that's okay, Rachel.
Sure. What was the question?
Yeah, so just a little bit about like what do students do for fun? So we've talked a lot about this like serious academic situation. So what do students do outside of the classroom for fun and just kind of blow off steam?
What do students not do I think it's a better way for me to frame it, because I remember being stunned by, I'm also a graduate. I'm an alum from St. John's, from the Annapolis campus, 2019. And I remember, as somebody who was on campus, just being stunned by how relentless the activity was, because the curriculum is very rigorous, and you do spend a lot of time reading. So I just thought, how can people possibly make time for things? But it's rejuvenating. So it's not rigorous in the sense that it depletes you. It makes you want to go out and create things and have community, manifest the things that you're reading in this vibrant community. So I think for the Annapolis campus, music is intrinsic to the experience. There are pianos peppering the whole campus. If you're walking in Mellon Hall, which is one of our classroom spaces, you'll hear someone playing on the piano, and you'll be able to access multiple pianos in study rooms, in public areas. So you hear that constantly all the time. There are multiple small choirs, orchestras, small music groups, a cappella groups. There's lots of theater. There are things like board game clubs. We have some really weird clubs because Johnnies are weird. One of the oldest clubs from the 70s on the Annapolis campus is Storytellers. And everybody just sits around a fire and has cookies and milk and reads different stories. And there's like a specific rule that you can't read anything in that space that is on the program. So you're actually getting you're getting exposed to lots of different kind of stories. There's croquet, there is European martial arts. There's lots of cultural clubs, and believe it or not, lots of study groups. There's a very strong study group presence, which seems counterintuitive because we're already doing so much studying and reading. I myself was in an Eastern Classic study group because I wanted to round out some of the Western-centric things we study. But yeah, anything you can think of, there is a presence for it. There's an interest that you can get and galvanize and bring together. So there's just always something going on, and it's very community-centric. Yeah, lots of activity.
Yeah, and so I can jump in about Santa Fe specifically, and I'm so glad that this question was raised, because sometimes we are so proud of and so enamored with the program that sometimes we don't think about, questions that obviously you guys will be having about what, is this still college? Is this still, all these other things, and absolutely. And in Santa Fe, as Drew touched on, we are very, very outdoorsy. We have a mountain on campus. Santa Fe, I think, is one of the best kept secrets in the country, especially for me growing up on the East Coast. I had so many misconceptions about Santa Fe, that it was hot or in the middle of nowhere, all these things. And it's actually incredible. It's basically, we're in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. So tons of skiing every winter. We are at 7,500 feet on our campus. So we're actually Denver and another half of Denver. So they brag about being the mile high, and we're like the mile and a half high city. Just 260 acres on our campus that is just for hiking and mountain biking and backpacking and all that. Every weekend, pretty much, we are going out and exploring amazing nature or cultural heritage sites. There's so much Native American influence out here, which I really appreciate. I think so much the US, unfortunately, that has been obliterated or moved, to not the forefront of so many areas. And here it really is still a very strong presence. And so there's feast days and dances, and the art is just everywhere. And so we're a very bohemian place, very outdoorsy, which is not to say you have to be physically that active at St. John's. A lot of students are like, well, I'm not really that outdoorsy, but I want to be in beautiful, nature, but I don't need to be hiking up the mountain. And that's fine. There's so many other things to do. All the reading groups, Japanese film club, pottery, obviously in the Southwest, pottery has such a beautiful heritage. And so there's just photography. It's the land of Georgia O'Keeffe and, famous writers from the 30s. So there's just all of that palpable influence and opportunities out here. And I think something we really push as an institution is to balance, I think it was Aristotle that said, you have to, in order to really be working out the mind, you also have to be working out the body. I don't think that was exactly how he said it, but and that's really, really true. And in Santa Fe, our gym, which is like the best gym in town, which is hilarious, there's a big banner over the door and it says, "Great books, great gym." And I think that that's, very much what we're about, is that you have to we have to balance it. What's even funnier is our former director of security, his name was Jim, as in J-I-M. So students made a sign over his door that said, "Great books, great Jim," which is really funny. And so I think that's just kind of indicative of we're pretty much passionate nerds in everything we do. And that can be manifested in all different personalities, all different interests, all different ways of interacting with the program, but also with the amazing cities where we find ourselves. Both Santa Fe and Annapolis have consistently been voted like, you know, 2 of the top 25 best college towns. So there's so much to do beyond St. John's. It's really spectacular.
Yeah, and the culture is just so very different. And I use this word very intentionally because I think that, I think particularly on the East Coast, I know that I'm guilty of this. We have this mindset that like, oh, the rest of the country is just like us, right? It's all the same. And then you go out there and you realize, well, wait a second, everyone out west, they take things like a little bit more slowly. And they kind of like let it like air out a little bit and just like vibe. Whereas like on the East Coast, we tend to be like, okay, gotta go, 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 go. And so for me, it's really refreshing to just be in a place where like, I don't have to worry about speaking as quickly as possible. During my presentation, you all probably noticed that I speak very quickly. And that is not because I'm rushing or that I'm nervous. Like this is like very relaxing for me, but it's because I just like, I'm around people all day. They're trying to like convey as much information as quickly as possible. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing, right? Because I think that it has its very own outlook on life. But it's just different. So you go to Santa Fe and like people show up to work in their cargo shorts and a t-shirt, right? So I had gone out there on a trip and I had forgotten like my last work outfit. So like I'm usually showing up in like my collared shirts and my khakis, like all tucked in with my shoes. And I walked in and I told our director out there, I said, I am so sorry. Like all of my clothes are dirty. Like I'm in jeans and a t-shirt. And she's like, she looked me up and down. She's like, oh, no, that's what we wear every day. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I'm like, be right back, transferring to Santa Fe. So it's just like, even just like the sense of like how people carry themselves and how they dress is just so vastly different. And I think the one key piece that we actually forgot to mention is that in the application process, you are asked to choose a campus, but that can change at any point throughout your process. And our students will also transfer back and forth. So you don't have to pick one. You can pick both, which I think is awesome. So I think for a lot of students, particularly my students, because I work with students that are more in the Mid-Atlantic Northeast region, as does Rachel, our students kind of want to stick a little bit closer to home. They want it to be within driving distance. So they're not always, you know, the one that says, okay, I'm just going to go on a 3-hour flight to Albuquerque and I'm going to go to Santa Fe. But they are the students that after the first year that they're comfortable, they're like, actually, now that I'm like a little bit away from home, like 3-hour flight doesn't seem so bad. And so it's that wonderful option that you get of being on both campuses, which I think is just very, very, it's unique, I think, amongst colleges to be able to transfer to 2 very different places, but also kind of keep with your studies, which I think is particularly cool.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, we do randomly, I think for a liberal arts college our size, it's an amazing thing. We happen to offer 2 different campuses and in very different parts of the country. And a lot of students will often ask, well, how on earth am I supposed to choose between the campuses? They're both amazing and they're both parts of my, you know, personality. And so I think that you don't have to, as Drew is saying, it's really great that we have this opportunity for you to be able to spend a year or more on the other campus is really great. But I think what really is the most important thing is that we are so similar, that what, you know, really ties us together is this one thing we all do have in common, however that's manifested in all the different kinds of personalities, is we are just insatiably curious. And so a lot of times, you know, counselors will say, and I don't know if we have any counselors listening today, but I do want to just say that, you know, we have that in common, that again, no matter what your interest is, what you would otherwise major at anywhere else, whatever your, you know, personality type is, that just wanting to get into these ideas, being willing to study things outside your comfort zone and really push back on a lot of the things we've been raised to believe. I mean, that's what we're really looking for. And so there's so many different ways that you can find out more about St. John's. You know, definitely as other schools are doing, we are freaking out with putting as much content as possible on YouTube and on our website, virtual tours. There's tons of different ways for you to connect more with us. You know, you can absolutely do one-on-one interviews with an admissions counselor, or you can, you know, talk with current students. There's so many different ways to connect. And so I really encourage you to look into that. One of the big things I want to mention is our Summer Academy, which is for rising juniors and seniors. So if you're at all intrigued by anything you have heard today, come try it out in person. And obviously most years it's in person. We do 5 weeks total over the summer, 3 in Santa Fe, 2 in Annapolis. You can choose any single one. And it's just a great way to like maybe choose a particular theme, like art and nature or politics and society, or, you know, all of these other things. And so you can go to one of these amazing towns and just try it out. And there are scholarships. There's really great, you know, ways to just get more hands-on experience. Right now, a lot of virtual things, you know, this summer we were doing it online. And so you can still have amazing conversations and check us out that way. But I do want to give a little push for the Summer Academy. Looks great, you know, for your application to any school, but especially if you're at all intrigued with St. John's, you have to just kind of try it for yourself to really get how amazing this is. So.
Yeah, and one of my favorite ones that we did in 2019 was, it was all about revolutions, right? So it was like politics and revolution. Sorry, no, it was revolution and rebellion. I'm sorry, I was like, it's alliterative, where did it go? So revolution and rebellion, but it played with this idea of revolution. And it played with it both in this like political sense, but also in like the astronomical sense. So our students got to use our telescopes and our planetarium on our Annapolis campus, at least, to like look at the stars and like think about astronomy and think about the mathematics behind astronomy. So it was this really cool, awesome experience to really think about, you know, just this singular word contains so much of human knowledge baked into it and standing behind it. So it's just a really fascinating thing. So if you do get the chance to use Summer Academy, it is definitely a wonderful experience. So I do want to move us in the direction of our closing remarks, because I don't think we have any more questions in our Q&A, which is great. I'm going to take that as a sign that we've answered all of them before you even had them. But I do actually want to touch quickly on the application process. I don't want to go into too much detail. But we are on the Common App. We do have our own application as well. We do require a supplemental essay, but I did spend my summer doing this wonderful YouTube series on our application process. So if you go to our YouTube page and you search it and you look for our, I believe the title of the series is Becoming a Johnny 101. It will break apart, I think there's like 7 or 8 episodes of breaking apart each section of our application, what's included in the application total, what are you looking for in the essay, how do I ask for recommendation letters, what have I fill out in the Common App, things like that. So I did a really extensive detailed information on that. But as always, we are extremely accessible, so there is absolutely no reason to be hesitant or be afraid to ask us questions. Students always say, oh, I'm so sorry to bug you. And like, my job is to literally answer your questions. Please bug me. It's in my job description. So it is always appreciated when you ask us questions, because we're at St. John's because we love the place and we love talking to people about it. So never hesitate to reach out, but also check out our YouTube channel for a lot of more really cool information. And with that being said, I do want to kind of close this out and thank you all for joining us this morning. I think, yes, it's still morning on the East Coast, meaning it's morning everywhere else. Cool, cool, cool. But again, thank you all so much for joining us. We hope that this presentation was very helpful and insightful. Finally, if you do have any more questions, let us know and we would love to chat. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all the information. Just want to thank the panelists for their time and also thank you for joining us. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. I would appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, this was just one of the many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions. And in about a week, you'll be able to find the session's recording as well as any other sessions that you've been able to attend. Thank you and have a great day.